So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lieutenant Dingaman, and he's going to go through the PowerPoint and provide the facts that are in it.
Chair Morissette, members of the committee, as Katie said, I'm Mike Dingaman with the Oregon State Police, and unlike the other organizations that are represented here today, just wanted to go on the record as since I represent a state agency, the state police is neutral with regards to 388. As Katie said, the common theme through this is to protect the patients, treat it like medicine. And when we sat down and talked about the problems and try and group them into how to educate you all, they're going to have to make the policy decisions. So these are the kind of the clear and overriding characterizations of the problems. And first of all, there's absolutely no program oversight other than just the registry card system that Health Department administers. There's extremely limited access to the records that the Health Department manages. And although we've always had abuse in the Act, what we are seeing now is what I would characterize as significant abuse. We believe that it's gotten to the point where it's above and beyond what is reasonable.
Excuse me. Will we have copies of this? We don't have them right now, right?
Yes. Yes, we do have copies of this.
Oh, if you could distribute the copies. If you have extra copies, we'd like to have them.
Sure.
Up here.
Thank you. Right now?
If you have them. If you don't have enough copies for everyone, we'll get them later, but that way we don't have to take notes from scratch. We can just follow along and take notes. Thank you. Thank you.
And again, lastly, the thing that we're hearing continuously now, and law enforcement hears about it more and more, and then we hear it through other avenues, is that the victimization of the patient. So again, that was the core problems that were associated with what we've been seeing. If you look at the preamble within the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act, there's three different things that you can pull out of the Act and that in terms of what the intent is. And one, marijuana should be treated like other medicines. Two, patients should be allowed to use small amounts of marijuana. And three, only make those changes necessary to protect doctors and patients. And you have to start with the premise that the possession of marijuana, the manufacture, delivery of marijuana is unlawful in Oregon, but for this narrow exception that we have within the Act. And what we're seeing now is not a narrow exception. I think we see it as a big gaping hole. If you look at the website from the Health Department from January of 2009, there were 21,500 patients, 10,400 caregivers, and 2,200 pending applications. And I'm told by the Health Department that you can add that number to the patient count, so you're roughly looking at about 23,000 plus patients. Since January 1st of 2008, we've had 7,800 new patients that have come into the program, and that number, if you go back to January of 2006 when 1085 was put into effect, the number of patients in the program has doubled. The other thing that we wanted to make note of is that there's absolutely no restriction on the number of patients that can be assigned to a caregiver. Although there's been restrictions placed in other areas in terms of card holders, nothing with regards to how many patients a caregiver can have. The other thing you look at from the website is that as of January, there were 2,847 attending physicians that have recommended the use of marijuana in Oregon. And you look at the definition of an attending physician, it means the person who has the primary responsibility for the care and treatment of the patient. So again, primary responsibility for the care and treatment of the patient. When we start breaking down that 2,847 recommendations, there's 10 physicians statewide that have recommended over 75% of those 23,000 recommendations. And if you break that down a little bit further, there's one physician in particular that has made over 7,500 recommendations, which equates to 35% of all the recommendations in the Act. So if you were to look at busting that out over a year period, if that particular physician was working 52 weeks a year, 5 days a week, never took a day off, and never took a holiday, that person would have to see 29 patients per day, one time a year. So the question that we have when we start looking at that is, how is it possible for a person to be an attending physician for 7,500 plus patients that are supposed to have a debilitating condition and be really sick and provide for their primary care and treatment?
Now, I understand that particular physician is not working anymore. Is that true?
This number here is based on 2008, or as of January 1st of 2009.
There is a physician out there right now who has...
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a current physician.
Okay.
Same with the 10 that are accounting for over 75% of all the recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
So just a little bit of review in terms of when we talk about with the possession limits. A patient and a caregiver can possess in combination no more than 6 plants, 18 seedlings or starts, or 24 ounces of usable marijuana. And when we talk about typical plants, at least what we see when we show up at these grow sites, typically anywhere from a half pound to a pound a plant. An indoor plant more in the half-pound range, or an outdoor plant more in the pound range. So its potential at the time of harvest, you could be looking at in that 4.5 to 7.5 pounds potential marijuana that would be available. Now we add in the person responsible for the grow site, and a person responsible for a grow site can grow for up to 4 more people. So you multiply that all out by 4. So that person could be in possession of 24 plants, 72 seedlings or starts, or up to 6 pounds of dry usable marijuana at any given time. And again, if we go back and look at those half-pound to 1-pound typical plant sizes, those, you could be looking at potentially about 18 to 30 pounds. This is an example of what we are beginning to see, particularly with the outdoor grows, of what we're beginning to see more and more of. This is a legal grow, and these are trees. These are plants that are pushing 8 feet tall, 6 feet wide, and we've got some red things there that we'll kind of put that in perspective for you because the overhead shot isn't revealing. But each of those plants there is capable of putting out multiple pounds of marijuana. And what you've been hearing today, or at least from what I heard earlier, is that patients aren't having access to marijuana. They're complaining that they aren't getting it. I think Stormy talked to you a little bit about the caregiver and the person responsible for the roadside abuse that was occurring, where they're only getting limited amounts of marijuana from that caregiver and grower, if at all, are putting out pounds and pounds and pounds. So the question, where is it all going?
And now, excuse me, that is a current grow site?
Yes. At the time this picture was taken.
And you say that was a legal or illegal?
Legal.
A legal grow site.
By plant count.
And those green things that look like trees are...
marijuana plants.
Marijuana plants. Okay.
This is what we are seeing more and more and more of as this act is aged with regards to the outdoor plants. Okay, when we go back and we look at what the group that worked on Senate Bill 1085, the purpose of 1085 is, prior to that, the same issues we're talking about today. There was abuse in the act. There was confusion on the parts of the cardholders as well as law enforcement on how to administer the act, how to be in compliance, how to enforce it. So a work group had gotten together and had worked on, how can we make changes that provide for some clear, bright lines for both the cardholders and enforcement, so that everybody that wanted to be in compliance could be in compliance. And what we've learned now that 1085 has been in effect for 3 years, that it did help in some areas. There are some areas within the Act that provided some clear, bright lines for everybody. But abuse in other areas has skyrocketed significantly. One of the problems that we identified, as I mentioned in that first slide, was that is the limitations to which DHS is able to provide information, and these are statutory limitations. When law enforcement calls in to verify the status on a cardholder, whether it's the patient, the caregiver, or the grower, if it's over the LEDS terminal, all we get is a yes or no. We don't get how many cards are at the site or anything about who any of those people are. If we call in during regular business hours, we'll still only get a yes or no, but we'll get how many cards are associated either with that person or the address, but no information with regards to who any of the people are in the mix in that patient, caregiver, person responsible for the grow site cycle. Here's an example to illustrate what I'm talking about. In the red circle there, you'll see this is a caregiver, and we'll come in just assume, for the sake of this example, that this person has in possession currency, scales, packaging material. This person happens to be a patient or is a caregiver for 3 patients, and each patient can have their own grower. So that would be the cycle of people that would be associated with this caregiver.